one of the things that we are trying to do while things are kind of slow, and also so that neither of us go insane, is to actually review movies that we like. Well, we're mostly doing movies just because I think the time commitment isn't quite as big as like a TV show or whatever the case may be. Not that we're not going to do that, but we're going to be talking about a movie from 1979 today called The Warriors. And Joseph, you had never seen this before, right?
Never.
Okay. So I picked this movie for a couple of reasons. One, it's kind of a classic that's a favorite of mine. Two, this movie, at least from a specific standpoint, goes against sort of the modern culture of there's never been diversity in Hollywood before. So that argument that like Hollywood's always been like crazy white or whatever, The Warriors is a movie that stands sort of in the face of that. And so we want to talk about it, the good, the bad, and because this is a movie I love, but am not critical of.
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah, there's criticisms for it, for sure.
I think that even for the time, there are things that you can say, this wasn't done great, or you can see where the budget
came into play.
Yeah, where there were certain things that they had some budgetary restraints.
But with what they had to work with, I mean, fantastic movie. You know what I mean?
Yes. So for one of the things that I think is really cool about this movie, so this is the first point I want to make.
Okay.
This is an adaptation of a book.
Mm-hmm.
This is also an adaptation of Greek history and mythology, which I think is one of the most interesting things about this. I pulled this up from kind of a random website, but it's the Warriors Historical Lesson. So the film is loosely based on, and I'm going to butcher these pronunciations, so forgive me for this, Xenophon's Anabasis, which detailed his role among the 10,000, a group of mercenaries hired by Persian leader Cyrus the Younger to help overthrow his brother in a military coup. Now, if you've seen The Warriors, the name Cyrus might stand out to you because he's essentially the figurehead of the movie that starts this whole awful process for the Warriors.
Yeah.
So it not only is it based on that historical moment, there's a lot of things from the Odyssey that play into this that we're going to talk about a little bit as we kind of go through.
I didn't even think about that.
Yeah, there are a few that stand out in particular, and some of them that I think will So the Iliad, when the Odyssey. So some of the names of the characters are specifically from those things, like Ajax.
Different
So
mythos of Greek.
Yeah. Ajax, who is Dexter's dad from the show Dexter. Yeah. His character is almost completely pulled. Like the personality of his character is almost completely pulled from Ajax from, I believe, the Iliad. So he fights Odysseus. They compete for possession of the Achilles armor. They fight to a draw, and the contest is decided based on the speaking elegance. Ajax loses and becomes furious over it. And so Ajax in the movie, and this is something that they set up from the very beginning, he's a womanizer. He's also probably their best fighter. And ultimately his downfall comes from those two things because he's not thinking clearly. And he loses. So that I just kind of think that was a really cool kind of thing. So
it is how they blend history into the movie.
Yeah, and what's so great about that is that it's not done in a way where they're taking something from the past and essentially reworking it into like obviously it was the 1970s, but they weren't taking that and trying to kind of reproduce it. It's essentially an adaptation, or they were influenced by these stories and these characters, some of which are influenced. Yeah, it's a bigger inspiration in some cases than it is in others.
Yep.
So you may have a few of the characteristics of a character, or with someone like Cyrus, they took Cyrus is the leader. Cyrus is killed, and then it sets off the warriors being blamed for this, which we'll get to as well, because I thought that scene was interesting. And then this journey that they have to take home through all of this dangerous gang territory, which in a lot of ways mirrors what was going on with the Odyssey, that, you know, they're going on this dangerous adventure to accomplish a task, which I think is really cool. And it's such a simple concept for a movie.
Executed well, too. So you pretty much covered the synopsis. Just to put it in a, I wrote it down earlier just to put it nice and simple. The Warriors are a gang, and when they're falsely accused of the murder of Cyrus, the leader of all the gangs, or future leader of all the gangs, they must make their way back to Coney Island from Pelham Park, I believe it was, with the cops and rival gangs chasing them. Pretty much simple. And the weaving of history, as you were mentioning, I think just as another element. I believe the version I watched was the director's cut.
So you had did you have all the comic book?
Yes.
Yeah. So I watched the original. And
I couldn't find the original.
I had to. It was on AMC, so AMC Plus or whatever. So, you know, this is totally off topic, but I'm so tired of all of these different subscription services because nothing is wherever you want it to be, and you're like, man, I want to watch this movie, and it's like, well, you need to have AMC, and it's like, but I just want to watch this one movie.
It's going to come full circle to where we go back to basically cable.
Yeah, we're going to be paying $100 a month. Yeah.
For all of these streaming services.
So I'm just gonna. I've pulled up the movie, and we're not gonna do a detail by detail like we've done with Halo and other things in the past. But I did want to show some of the visuals off, so people kind of when they're watching this on YouTube, they have a bit of an understanding of what we're talking about, to a better degree than maybe you would get just listening to this. But if you haven't seen this movie, my suggestion would be go watch it, and then come back and watch the movie. So I know we've already semi-spoiled.
You mean listen to us?
And then listen to us, yeah.
Yeah.
Watch it or listen to us, either way. So I know we already spoiled that Cyrus dies, but to be honest, this movie came out in the 70s, and it's the jumping off point for the movie, really. Like, that's the inciting
the first
incident.
5 minutes.
Yeah, so it's not... It's one of those things that if you're mad about that, like, I don't know what to tell you guys. It's not the end of the world. Okay, so one of the things I wanted to talk about first is that I think there are actually a lot of really good visuals in this.
I agree.
We're getting this shot that I've got up right now is of the wheel on Coney Island, and this is the home of the Warriors. And one of the things I love about the opening of this, and it's something that I thought was done pretty well, is that not only are they kind of showing you Coney Island and the area that they live in, and it's all lit up at night, you're getting these introductions to all of the characters. And they all have it's like little lines. So one of the characters would be like, well, I'm really worried about this meeting, because the whole point is that they're all gathering with Cyrus at this meeting because the gangs are essentially going to come together to try to cooperate
for a better future.
For a better future, to run New York City in a way. And I think it's really cool. I think it adds kind of like mystery to it. It helps with a little bit more of the fantasy of the movie, if you will. Just kind of taking this outside of real New York in the 70s and giving it a little bit more of this like fantastical setting, like almost you'd almost say like like mythology or a fairy tale in a way.
They romanticize it.
They romanticize it. Yeah, that's a great way of putting it for sure. So yeah, I really, really like the way that they started the opening, and
that's Cleon right there, the chief of the Warriors. And it's important to. I love how they introduce him right off the bat, and you get this conversation between him and Swan.
Yes,
I can't remember what the conversation is, but I think it has to do with we have to go in there disarmed.
Yeah, I think you are right about that, and I think that it's really great because Swan ultimately ends up being he is our protagonist of the movie. He's somewhat soft spoken, but he's a good fighter, and he's essentially second in command. Like he's the one who will take over for Cleon. And you have the names pulled up?
I pretty much remember.
Oh, good, because that's
most of them.
I'm gonna make that your responsibility.
Okay. Let me pull up the names. I'm gonna go to IMDb just in case. The main characters, for the most part, I pretty much remember.
So one of the other things that we'll probably be talking about throughout the review is the costuming and all the different types of gangs, because not all of them have been created equal in this movie. Some of them are goofier than others. Some of them are just wearing matching shirts. But then you have other gangs who I think they actually do a pretty good job, especially for the time. You can tell that they actually wanted to make everyone look like they were specifically a part of something.
All together, like a unit.
A unit, yeah. And it may not have worked all the time, but I like that that attempt was there. You could tell that even on this budget, they were trying to pull something off. The vision is still there, even if it doesn't quite get there.
So it's kind of what I was saying is like some of the visuals or what I was thinking earlier, some of the visuals and some of the lines, the one-liners are cheesy, but they work for me.
Yeah.
And you can tell they're operating on a budget, and so you have to kind of give them that. That just still doesn't mean you can't be critical. Like, okay, maybe you could have done better here, but I think, these montages of all these gangs are good, but then it's kind of comical in a sense as well. Some of them, like what you're just showing the mimes, the white dudes mimes and did. But a lot of the gangs are shown pretty stereotypical. Like you have the Cuban gang and they all have the fedoras, and then you have that baseball gang.
Yep.
Dude, and then the roller skating one or whatnot.
So those are if I remember correctly, those are like the punks. We're going to talk about them a little bit. They're really funny to me because it's like they're basically wearing like I think rugby shirts, and some of them are roller skating, and you're like, I don't understand how that's really that punk, but I again, for the budget, I appreciate what they were trying to pull off, even if it doesn't quite work all the time. I don't think that I think maybe there's a potential they were trying to go for simplicity, and sometimes it was just too simple.
Yeah.
So, for instance, the Warriors,
that's a good point.
They're pretty much just wearing red. What would you call it? Like red leather vests.
Yep.
And that's not a problem for me. Because you're like, okay, it's kind of the symbol of who they are.
But it works.
It's simple.
It's not cheesy. It looks good. You know what I mean?
Yeah. What's interesting is I think some of it has to do with the fact that the gangs that get more attention in the movie, their costuming looks better.
Mm-hmm.
So the Gramercy Riffs, who are Cyrus's gang,
yes,
that you could probably compare them to like the Black Panthers. They even though I don't know if everybody gets upset about everything. That's like I say that and then I go, I wonder if someone's going to be like, well, actually, like, hang on, like we're just again, this is film, it's fake, and they're getting these ideas from real life a lot of the time. Doesn't mean that it's a one-for-one comparison.
Yes.
So anyway,
some inspirations from them.
Exactly.
I would definitely say they seem inspired by the Black Panthers.
Yeah, I think they're very militaristic. The outfitting to me fits that to a T.
Yeah. And then you have the Rogues, who are the antagonists of the story. Luther with the Rogues, who's the chief, is the antagonist of the story. And, I don't know if, there's definitely prejudice, you could say racism, but then at the end he's like, he's the one that shot Cyrus, and he's just like, I just did it because I wanted to, just because he's a terrible person.
Yeah.
It's not like he had this deep ulterior motive, other than just to, come for probably the Warriors,
He was the Joker before the Joker was the Joker.
Yes.
And kind of that like, I just want to see the world burn mentality.
Yep.
From Heath Ledger.
Yeah, so, that's exactly who he reminded me of actually when I was watching it, was Heath Ledger and the Joker. So that's a great comparison.
So I was trying to see if I had anything before we get to this first part with Cyrus. I like the music in this movie quite a bit. It's got a bit of this like John Carpenter vibe, but then they also use songs in the movie that I think are just they're appropriate for what they're trying to do with the world building.
And it sets the setting. I enjoy the narrator.
The narrator is great.
Yes,
she is awesome. Her voice works perfectly. And then I love because I love that they play that song. And it's like Nowhere to Hide.
Yeah,
and it sets up perfectly. It's like they're in trouble.
Yep.
And it's a way. And we talk about a lot of the time where it's like show don't tell. And I think even with music, and we don't talk about music that often because I don't think either of us are really all that like
musically
in depth with it. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
like I can't sit here and give you all of it, but I like the fact that they have this woman who's essentially like a DJ, and she's the narrator in certain moments for the story, and she's kind of playing the soundtrack for the Warriors, right?
And
it's really cool.
She has her own character too, which is awesome as well,
Yes.
because she's very powerful. You can tell she's in control. She has obviously inside sources, and she's communicating not only to the audience but directly to the Warriors as well, and the other rival gangs out there.
Yeah. The only other thing I had before we start getting more into the story is that this is another great example, like we talk about a lot, of really good world building, as far as you get the idea of where they are in this New York City that is very similar to what New York City was like in the 70s. It's very lived in. There's spray paint everywhere. The Warriors are tagging different turf, and it doesn't have that problem that a lot of modern television and movies do, where everything just feels sanitized and clean.
Yeah.
And the world doesn't feel like it's lived in. You don't get the feeling that anyone in the world is comfortable really living there. It's like they've just been placed into this really sanitized environment. Whereas with the Warriors, everything going on in the world around them seems to be part of what they are all doing. Like they really live there. It's really like these different territories really belong to these people.
Yep.
Everything fits.
They're rugged, dirty, kind of comes off unsafe, insecure. You can see all the different graffiti, all the trash, all the different types of people there, and the costumes they wore. And you get that sense too, especially at the end when you have that prom couple that shows up on the subway with them.
Yes.
And kind of that stare off between each other, and then the prom couple ends up getting nervous and get off the subway.
Yeah, that's a great moment too, because it's a good example of again showing that there is this class divide, there is this difference between these gangs and then what you could consider either like upper class or just people who are better off. And you kind of get that moment and that tension between these groups of people that's like there's just no understanding of either of those worlds.
Yeah.
It's pretty cool.
It is. And speaking of that, Mercy, I believe is her name, grows on me as the story unfolds.
She's my least favorite character.
She is?
Yeah.
She grew on me.
She always has been. Some of it's the acting. Some of it, she's got like
she's definitely the annoying character. Most of it.
Yeah. So she's essentially a prostitute. I think that's what they imply, even if they don't outright say it. I don't think they do. But there's this scene in the movie where Swan, she takes another shirt, I think, from one of the gang members, and she goes, "Well, they're looking for someone in a pink shirt," and she's just wearing and for me,
a blue coat over the pink shirt.
Yeah, over the pink shirt, and I couldn't figure out if that was where the mistake came in, whether that was somewhere someone didn't realize like, oh, if she's going to wear this button-up shirt over her pink shirt, she needs to button it up because she's not doing anything. But I can't tell if it was on purpose because she's not that smart. Like she's not supposed to be that smart of a character, or if it was just a dumb thing that they did. Like, oh, look how resourceful she's trying to be, but then they didn't really follow through with it.
She's definitely if Ajax is the womanizer, she's the vice versa of that.
Yeah,
that's how they, at least whether she's a prostitute or more just a woman who knows she says that line. A woman who wants to be with many men, because she makes that comment in the show that she knows that her life seems to be that she's going to have a saggy belly with 5 kids. And the exact line that she makes. And so she's living for the now. She's not thinking of the future.
Right.
And so she's just like kind of on that adventure, just, going to the next thing, to the next thrill, to the next thrill.
Yep.
And she finds that with Swan. And they both interact really well together and go against each other, because Swan's very much, calculated. He's the leader. He's, I'm just trying to get the mission done. And, she gets to a point to where almost takes him off the mission. Then he's like, you know what, Why don't you just go and I'm going to go my way? And then, they end up running back into each other. And towards the end there, when they're on the subway and they see the prom couple, Mercy's going to fix her hair, and he grabs her hand and is like, no, kind of showing like you don't need to fix yourself for these people.
Yeah. They don't need to determine
good
who
scene.
you are. Yeah, I think you're right. Well, let's get back to sort of the this
first
moment.
act.
Yeah, the first act with Cyrus. And we'll run through this again. I don't want to spend too much time on it. But so we have this whole meeting with Cyrus, and he's really like riling up the gang, and you get the moment where our antagonists are passing the gun around. I was trying to get a shot of it, but there it is. So you can kind of see like they're passing the gun around, and there's Luther, and he's gonna shoot Cyrus. Now, I have logistical issues with this scene for a couple of reasons, because I get there's a lot of people around, it's loud, and again, the reason that I will partially forgive this, it doesn't get a full pardon. Is because it is just the inciting scene for the movie. So they have to get this started somehow. Like Luther has to die, or no, not Luther. Excuse me, Cyrus has to die, and so it had to happen somehow. And it makes sense that he would get shot. It's a little bit, but the whole
no one saw him shoot Cyrus.
Exactly. But you couldn't have really done it. You couldn't have had someone stab him unless it was like Luther had convinced someone. There are ways that you definitely could have made this better.
Didn't they have silencers back in the...
silencers. I hate silencers in movies, dude, because they're so unrealistic.
Yeah, no. They're like super silent when they're not really that silent.
So, but of course, he's using this like revolver, and so it's going to make this blast. People are everywhere. They're clearly going to see this is the case. So we'll overlook it, even if it's not... logistically, it doesn't really make a lot of sense. And what it makes even less sense because... he shoots Cyrus, and then blames it on... This is Fox, right?
I think so, yeah.
And so he gets blamed for it because he sees it, and he's like, the Warriors did it. It was the Warriors. And I just kept going like, why would anyone just believe this guy, right? So
what makes them go like, oh yeah, he's trustworthy?
Yeah, and this is one of the problems that I have in a lot of movie and TV shows where there's the Gramercy Riffs, who are Cyrus's people, pretty much just believe it. And so because that happens, not only are the Warriors blamed for this, but their leader gets arrested because of it. He goes down fighting. You get your
Does
first...
he actually get arrested? I thought he got killed.
No, so they say later in the movie that he gets arrested.
Oh, okay.
So he got picked up. Yeah, so they beat him up, but as far as the movie seems to be concerned, he didn't die. He got arrested.
Gotcha.
And it's honestly one of the things I really like about this movie is that death isn't the only way that the Warriors get taken out.
Yep.
So it's like they're on this like fight for their survival, but they get arrested and sometimes they get killed or whatever the case may be. But that's what's kind of cool about the movie is that it wasn't just like, oh, we're gonna pick them off one by one through death.
And that's what I like about the movie is that it switches from this. You think in the intro that it's going to be this story about a better future, and then it switches to a survival story.
It almost becomes a horror movie in a way, which is kind of cool. So this all happens, and the Warriors have to get out of there, and they come hang out. They're in the...
They go to the seminary. The seminary.
They all go to seminary.
The cemetery.
Change their lives. And it's just really cool.
Movie over.
Yeah, you get to see this really great, these interactions with them, the differing personalities. Ajax and Swan get in a fight, and or they're going to get in a fight, and he kind of gets over it because they realize ultimately
they need to make it out there alive.
Yeah, what needs to be done. Here's a great scene with the Gramercy Riffs, and here's our mysterious DJ. This is all you ever see.
All you really need to see too.
Yeah, you get all of her personality.
It adds that mystery.
You get her voice over the microphone, and she is definitely one of the best characters in the movie as far as I'm concerned.
And actresses too, because she just conveys so much emotion and control, and it just from here down from her nose down.
Yeah. You get they're very hyper focused on this because the idea behind it is that she is very mysterious.
Yes.
She's cast in shadows. Her voice is really the only thing that matters as far as the movie is concerned, and it's just something that's cool. I really like that. So yeah, essentially they're going through all this. They have to fight a bunch of gangs. You have I'm pretty sure these are the skinheads.
Yeah, I think so.
And what's so funny is it's like the most culturally diverse group of skinheads.
Dude, when they said the skinheads and I saw a bunch of black people,
it's like black guys. I'm sure
Hispanic people. I think too with them. I was just dying. I'm like, hey man, that's great.
It's such an interesting movie.
Take on it, right?
Yeah. And part of it's like, man, they were just trying to get whoever they could. This is a moment with Ajax where you start to see his personality really come out. And again, this is something that I love when it's done well in movies where the characters have personality and they act in certain ways that make sense for their characters. Now, obviously,
where it just stands there mocking them.
Right. We were talking about before that there are moments where that doesn't always happen in this. A lot of the stuff that's surrounding Cyrus's death seems a little off, even though
contrived.
Yeah, it's like it's the opening section. It's the thing that sets everything in motion. So I'm willing to give it a little bit of forgiveness, but it definitely could have been done better. Like they could have spent a little more time being like, well, if this guy was in a big crowd of people and he just shot someone, everyone would know it was him.
Yeah.
And
everyone would be running away from him.
Right. And they wouldn't just be believing who he was pointing out as the culprits behind this, right? Because it's like, well, why would it have been the Warriors? Was there tension between Cyrus and the Warriors going on? Like, you could have established that a little bit better. And I don't think they do, right?
Right.
I don't think there's anything that necessarily
makes
is
that
clear.
Believable.
Yeah. So because the other game, it's the Rogues, right? They're the ones, because the Rogues come off kind of gross and seedy. In my mind, you go like, well, why wouldn't you think it was those guys? Because they come off as the ones that would be kind of deceptive or trying to cause problems.
Right. And you would have think that the Rogues would have, been right by the Warriors to shoot and then make it more believable, right?
Yeah, something like that,
Add some confusion there.
Yeah, so, and I get what they were going for, but I think we are in agreement that it definitely could have been done better. So yeah, they get on the train. You get this great moment where someone sets a fire in front of the train so they can't just take the train all the way back to Coney Island.
Yep.
You get a little bit more time with the Rogues because they have to set up how evil, pretty much they're just the blatantly bad guys. Like, I don't think there's anything redeeming about these guys throughout the entire movie.
Nothing.
I do love the main antagonist though.
Yeah.
I appreciate that he is just as goofy and just kind of like over the top evil.
Yep.
Especially because
just wants chaos for chaos's sake.
Yep. There's a scene at the end of the movie that we'll talk about that it's probably one of the most famous scenes for the movie. And I love it. I love this guy. And that's the thing is, like, over the top with personalities of characters can work in stories if you do it right. And some of that is dependent upon the actors. So
you got the orphans there.
Yeah, we run across like our first kind of, well, not really the first gang, but this is the first kind of big moment for them where I like the scene because you really do kind of feel the tension. And it's funny because the orphans weren't at the meeting and they have no idea exactly what's going on.
I know, dude, I died laughing.
Yeah,
this is where Mercy gets introduced to.
And she's the one who informs them of what's going on, right? She tells the orphans like what's going on with the Warriors because she's what's interesting is, like you were saying this before, she's a troublemaker. She's looking to incite problems with people because she likes that. And it's funny because it ultimately works against her in a way because she ends up tangled up in everything because she didn't just leave it alone. And she didn't just let him go.
She could have just stayed home.
Yep. And so I really like the orphans. And again, this is such a great moment for me as far as the writing is concerned in this movie because they have a personality. Their gang is treated like garbage, like they are the orphans. It works out. It's maybe a little on the nose, but I like that they look dirty. They're all wearing these like really gross looking shirts. It just kind of fits really well with it. And, they want to be part of the in crowd with these gangs, and they're just not treated that way.
Nope.
I just like it. I think it's a great little touch. for the movie. So they kind of go through their whole deal, and they get back on the train. And so while all of this is going on and they're being chased, it's cool to see, like, you get to see the Gramercy going through the process of, like, trying to find these guys.
Yep.
Like, they're not the ones acting in all of this. Everybody else is sort of acting on their behalf.
Yeah, it's kind of like Sauron, right? Like,
yeah, a little bit.
They're the not villain. That wouldn't be the proper way, because they're not the villain in it, but they're the mastermind behind everything, working everything out in the shadows, so to say.
You get to see how much power that they have without ever having to really step foot anywhere. Because they do this until pretty much the end of the movie.
Good cinematography. That's a good shot, too.
Yeah, and that's the thing, is that there are these moments in the movie that the shadows work really, really well. They know exactly how to set this up, but it's not every scene. Right, no. It doesn't always come out that way, and like we were saying before, the costuming doesn't always work. It's a little overly goofy even for the setting.
And the fight scenes, too.
Yeah, some of them are better than others. I actually think the one that comes up with the punks later on, the guys with the roller skates, is pretty good. So this is the moment where Fox gets killed by the police officer. He literally gets he gets thrown in front of a subway train.
Yeah. Bye-bye.
Yeah, rough end. And it's an interesting moment too, because he was the one that knew the truth.
Yeah,
he was the original one who kind of knew what happened. He saw what the rogues did, and half of them don't ever really find out what happened to him, because they think he got arrested, and so that's kind of it. It's the details of this movie that I really like a lot, of how the characters are kind of so much in this, like, survival mode, and then, like, people get lost along the way and they're not 100% sure what happened to them.
Yep.
They're
and Mercy, because Mercy saw the cop get him, but she didn't see the cop throw him into the subway.
Yeah.
Because she ran off, and so it makes everything believable.
And it's what is it? The baseball guy. These are the baseball guys coming up.
Just call them the Yankees.
Yeah, I know they have. I think I have the name in here.
Oh, that's so bad.
The Baseball Furies.
Yeah, the Furies. That's it.
I like what they did with this, like, because they have all their, like, face paint on and everything. Yeah. It really makes them just, like, weird.
It works for me. It's just cheesy.
Yeah. So they get like the
crap
baseball,
beat out of them.
Yeah, they get the baseball bats from these guys, and again, it's on a budget. They obviously didn't really have a choreographer for it, but it kind of works. And so this is actually one of my favorite gangs because of the obvious connection to Sirens.
Yep.
So and I think it's really funny because, and maybe it's a 70s, like, aesthetic, but I really don't find any of the women in this movie remotely attractive.
Yeah, I noticed that too. I think it's just a 70 aesthetic, as you mentioned, and it's funny because it's what's his name? I think it's Snow, the gentleman with the afro with the Warriors right there. He's kind of like the voice of reason, like, hey, we need to just get to Union Station.
He's the youngest. Yeah, he kind of seems to understand a little bit better, and all the other ones are like, no, man, we got to go hang out with these girls, which I love, and it works really well, because this is sort of that thing where it's like these are the Lizzies, and they have foul intentions for the Warriors ultimately.
But they use their femininity to their advantage to seduce them and lure them into a situation to where they would have their guard down.
Yeah. Look, a group of diverse, powerful female characters in the 1970s. Who would have thunk it? So yeah, this kind of plays, so they get separated, right? Mm-hmm. So part of the Warriors go this way, and then I think Swan, and then here you have the rest of them as well. And at some point, what's her name? Mercy. She shows up. So here's Ajax's downfall. He's talking to this girl on this bench. She's kind of like flirting with him, and it turns out that she's an undercover cop. And again, this is what we're talking about. This fits perfectly with who he is as a character. He's aggressive. He's a womanizer, and he thinks he can use his power to get himself out of any sort of situation, and ultimately he gets, like, upended by this little girl by this woman who's a cop, because he kind of let his guard down because he didn't think that she could do anything to him. She handcuffs him, and he's trying to like pull the bench or whatever, and it's pretty much his end, and they run off.
You don't feel bad for him because they set the scene up perfectly because she's obviously trying to seduce him, and then he starts kissing her really roughly, and she's saying, "No, I don't like that." And as he's being rough with her, she handcuffs him, and then that's spells his end, his downfall.
Yep.
And he comes up and he hits the first cop, and then the second one beats him.
Yep. And it's he goes down swinging. He's pretty much the same character at the end. And one of the things that's great about this, and I like about this movie, is that the heroes of this movie, would not be considered your average type of hero.
Yeah,
they're
Ajax definitely isn't a hero.
No, he's part of that group. He's the hero archetype in the sense that he's part of the main cast. He's part of the group of warriors that's trying to escape. You want them all to get back, despite the fact this guy's kind of like a trash human being. But it works so well that ultimately his pompous and his personality is his own downfall because he can't put that stuff aside in order for them to get back. He gets distracted, like the warriors that go hang out with the Lizzies. They're all of them are getting distracted and finding themselves in these situations because of it.
And making it worse for themselves.
Exactly, yeah. When in reality, if they had been able to stick to the mission and just get home, a lot of this probably wouldn't have happened.
Yep.
So yeah, you get a lot of time with these two. They get on the subway, and I sometimes I think some of the acting, like her acting, just doesn't do it for me.
Yeah.
It's just not quite there. It's not quite there with the whole cast. I disagree,
but I think her acting works for me in the sense of I was just assuming she was kind of playing that annoying role. You know what I mean? Kind of like how Bard is in The Witcher, but she actually has an arc in development, and she becomes less annoying as it goes on.
Yeah, and I agree. I see what they were trying to do with it. It just
now it could have been executed better.
Yeah,
I'm not saying that this is a perfect character and the acting was perfect. Could have been executed better and done. I think they should have toned down the annoyingness of her and maybe made her more thoughtful. You know what I mean? But yeah, I didn't hate it.
It could have been it could have been a more solid arc, like character arc. I think, is that what you're trying to get at? Like,
yeah, that's what I'm trying to get at. And just kind of there's I can't think of any character that comes to mind, but just more of she could still have the same arc and the same personality in a sense, just more realistic on living on the streets and less kind of like there's a way for a man or for a woman to cast and write her story to where she's sticking up for herself, but she's doing it and not in a just annoying way. That's the best way I can say it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and that's the thing. I just kind of find her character in general a little more irritating than anybody else in the movie.
Just kind of like talking loud and talking over and stuff, and it's and I get that has to happen, but I think maybe it's just her voice. Maybe it's you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Maybe if it was coming from a woman with more of a different sounding voice than hers, very just high and elevated, and I just don't like loud.
I think she doesn't have a whole lot of agency in this movie.
Yeah.
She's kind of just along for the ride while everybody else
babysat.
Yeah, and I guess that's fine. It would have been nice if her arc had gone a little bit further, maybe
develop the romance and like kind of like give her a slight. And I think they did by the end of the movie. Kind of had that slight change in her, but kind of establish that connection between her and Swan more, even with him and his attitude towards her. Right? Like I think they did a good job. I think they did a decent job with their story from beginning to end, but kind of like at that moment in the subway, you were just showing from that point forward, maybe changing it, whether either they go their separate ways or they become more connected. And
it might have actually worked better if they had not ended up together.
Yeah.
Like you were saying, like if it had been one of those things where she's like, thanks, and she's like, maybe I finally had enough.
Yeah.
Like this whole incident, maybe it changed her in a way that's like, maybe I'm ready to have a more quote unquote normal life, get out of the insane excitement because it clearly could lead to me getting killed.
Yep. Exactly.
Yeah. There's definitely some room there, I think, to do that. But I don't really mind their relationship too much. Again, I see what they were going for. I do really like that scene near the end on the train with the kids that were at prom or going to prom, and then Swan and Mercy. I think it's one of the best scenes in the movie, considering I generally don't really like her character all that much.
The ending scene with them too is good too, because she's like, I like to go on adventure, or I like going on adventures, and he said, where have you been? And you haven't been out of the city. And she's like, no, I haven't been anywhere, but I would still like to go on an adventure. And he just smirks.
Yeah.
And then they walk away.
Yeah.
And it's like,
that
all
right.
works.
Yeah.
But I think it could have been, like, it worked really well for me, but I think it still could have been a little bit better, a little bit more established, better character art, better character for Mercy, less annoying, toning some things down, but amplifying again. And when I say toning down, again, I'm not referring to her not standing up for herself, right?
Right.
I'm just talking about not being annoying and irritating.
Yeah, absolutely.
And loud and obnoxious. I'm just like, ugh.
So the next thing that we kind of get is this whole scenario with the Lizzies and our other group of warriors. And it's pretty much all of them just like partying, and the guys are trying to get with the Lizzies. And as this is, what I like about the scene is that, like, as this is going on, Snow is looking around, and he can kind of tell, because there's some more with with Swan and Mercy, where they like have their kiss, and she kind of describes her whole personality. It's like, you have Snow here, right? And he's looking around, and he can kind of tell something's off, right? He hasn't dropped. From what we can tell, he has not dropped his guard while they've been here. While the rest of them are just going into, their sort of their ape brains, and they're just not thinking about the whole situation.
They're being led by their third leg.
Yes, by their third leg, the other head. And so all this is going on, and what I really like about this is they are really trying to go for this connection to like sirens in mythology. They're trying to seduce them into this whole into their deaths, essentially.
Yes.
And so eventually they attack. And I don't know if I'll be able to grab it, but one of the funniest scenes, and so she tries to shoot one of them, and the warriors somehow manage to dodge. Again, movie's on a budget, but it's a little funny that it's very much a coincidence that they managed to dodge these bullets
and get out of the way.
And one of them hits one of the Lizzies with a chair, just like straight up smashes her with one. I don't think I can. It's somewhere in here. I'm trying to see if maybe.
Dude, I died laughing.
See if I can find it. Oh no, they've already. Where is that shot? It's so funny.
Just straight knocked her out with it.
So punches her,
trying to get stabbed by a knife.
Maybe it's.
Oh,
boom!
there it is.
It's slow motion. Just love. I think that's so good.
Perfect spot to do the slow motion too.
Yep. And that's one of the things, the movie has slow motion, but I don't think it gets overused. I think they use it at very specific moments. And Zack Snyder could definitely learn a thing or two from this 40-year-old movie.
Yes. That dude loves him some slow motion.
So, they get out relatively unharmed.
Snow gets cut by a knife.
Yeah, and it looks like the other guy, too, got cut on the cheek, or something happened to him. So they escape, and they're like, okay, we know what we need to do now. So now here comes the punks.
Swan. Oh, yeah.
And it's so, this scene is so funny to me because they're playing this music that makes you think that you're supposed to be like scared or like, oh no, here comes another gang, and it's this guy on roller skates.
I don't know if they did that for comedy, right? But I died laughing when I saw him on roller skates.
And who knows, maybe it's like a time period thing, and like roller skates just were looked at differently back then, or it wasn't as much of a, this kind of seems goofy. But yeah, I think over time that's definitely changed. And it's so funny too because he's one of the only ones wearing them. Like not all of the punks are wearing them. So they all get back together, right? And they come in, but this guy over here on the left is the one who was following them on the skates, kind of like the scout, So I guess it would make sense that he was wearing them if you kind of look at it from that. But these guys don't look like punks to me.
No,
they're wearing overalls and these rugby
shirts. Dude
shirts.
looks like a bigger version of Mario almost. Like bad Mario cosplay.
Yep. So And I think at this moment too, right? This is another one of those moments where I guess you would say that Mercy's personality is that she's kind of aloof of everything going on. Like, she knows that these guys are the punks and she knows they're bad news, but she doesn't think that Swan doesn't know this, or like she thinks Swan doesn't know. And so she's like, hey, these guys are bad news. And he's like, yeah, I know that. Like,
duh.
So they all, they go into the bathroom. They're getting ready to fight these guys. Some more of the punks come down. Their costuming is a little odd. It doesn't bother me all that much. And again, what I really like,
rascals all grown up
a little bit, yeah, yeah, it's kind of true. So what's good though is like it's pretty dirty. Again, like they really were doing their best, I think, to try to get certain details right. Despite
they made the bathroom very nasty, which is what I would imagine that bathroom would look like.
Oh yeah, and then they've got some of their weapons or whatever. And then they kind of have their fight. He sprays them with the spray paint. Which was pretty great. And they have their brawl. I think it's a decent fight. It works pretty well for what they were going for. There's nothing in that fight in particular that I was just like, you know what I mean? No one's shooting guns and magically people are dodging bullets. Which honestly, in this kind of movie, that would have been the route to go all the way through. Is that everyone, like, because everyone was using or was told not to bring weapons to the event, or like guns and stuff like that, nobody has firearms, right? Because the Warriors don't have firearms pretty much through the entire movie.
Yep.
And so it would have been nice if that was kind of just established as like, no one's going to have firearms in this. Everyone's just going to be using knives and concealable stuff. And then of course, the baseball Furies have their bats, because that's just a part of their character. I'm fine with that. I'm fine with that. But that would have been a nice little touch if the firearms just weren't really a thing, except for the one that the Rogues have.
Yeah.
That I could see that kind of just completely working for me.
Because that's within their character.
Yeah, exactly.
Characters, I should say. And I think this is the part where the Rifts find out that it wasn't the Warriors.
Yes, and that Luther and the Rogues were responsible for the inciting incident. Because of this guy, right?
Yeah.
This guy right here comes
whoever
in
that white dude is.
Yeah, I don't remember what exactly his
Axl
role.
Rose over there.
Yeah, with his eagle tattoo right in the middle of his chest. Right, so they're pretty much headed home. This is the scene that we've been talking about for a while, where the kids come from prom. It was really funny because I had wrote in my notes, I was like, rich kids ? And then if you watch the credits at the end, they actually are given credit as prom kids. And so I changed it. I was like, okay, they actually are prom kids. Because I wasn't, it's interesting you said that, because I was just like, I don't know. I mean, like, that could just be 70s fashion, what they were wearing out on the town that night in New York.
Yeah.
But it does turn out that it's true that they were the prom kids. And so they go through the whole incident, and Swan gives her the, oops, I jumped too far ahead. They drop the thing, and she's trying to like clean herself up, right?
Right.
And he's basically like, quit it, because it's like, you can't show them that
they're better.
That they're better. You think, yeah, and I think it works. It's a really good character moment. It shows Swan's compassion for her as a person, which is really cool. You want to talk about like these archetypes of characters, and him being the strong, silent type.
Yep.
But he also has this compassion for this woman despite everything that's been going on. Like their bond has strengthened through that. And it's just a cool little moment. And
that the prom kids are intimidated by him. He's just staring them
they're
down.
all like, oh no. This girl, that side eye. Yep. So just a really great, little moment in the movie to kind of wrap up their arc. The two of them going through this whole thing, and him trying to show her some respect. Now, I really like this scene of them back at Coney in the daytime, right? Because we have full circle. They were at Coney at night. Everything's lit up. Everything seems really mysterious. And then you kind of get the reality of this place for them. It's really run down. Obviously, no one's around during the day. It's really dirty and just kind of like beat up. and it just works really well. But now they're back on their home turf, right? They know exactly what they're doing. They're trying to like prepare for this fight. And then we get. Let me see if I can. Oh yeah, here we go. We have to do this because I love this part so much. So let's see right here. Let's see if it's gonna work. Oh, it's not coming through. Hang on.
It's not.
I have to fix the. That's you know what? I know exactly what it is. Sorry, everybody. We're just fixing one little thing. It's because I still have it on speakers and not coming through my headset. Because everything is complicated with this setup.
One day we'll get there.
Yeah, one of these days I will.
Get them donations coming in, people. It'll help us.
Yeah, listen,
better
y'all.
Quality.
My brain is a little fried, so please forgive me. All right, here we go.
Come out to play. Warriors, come out to play. Warriors, come out to play. Warriors, come out to play. Warriors.
So yeah, I like that moment. It's the one thing I always remember from this movie.
I don't like the bottles clanging together because again, I don't like loud like that. The certain type of loud noises, right?
Yeah.
Very pitchy and stuff like that. But man, his character, Luther's character, just the I'm evil just because I'm evil. No hidden depth to it. I just love chaos. Executed so well.
Yeah, and I like the bottles because it is so like it gets to you, and you can tell too with all of them. They're just like, oh God, like we have to deal with this guy. Like, and it's a mix of they're not fully afraid of him, right? And that's what's so cool because like even with this shot of all of they're all kind of looking at the rogues that are in the car, and there's a mix of it's like. You get a bit of like they know what's coming and what they have to do, and I just think it's really cool.
Yeah.
So yeah, this is pretty much the end of the movie, and jumping ahead a little bit, they get into this fight, and again, this is one of those moments. I'm sure you had the same reaction. So Luther has his gun, and him and Swan, and again, I think that if you were to ask most normal people to be like, come on guys, this is just made up, it's just a movie, but it is a little odd that he's like Luther standing not even 5 feet away from Swan, and he's got his revolver and Swan has this knife, and somehow Swan pulls this like Matrix style move and dodges the bullet, and he throws the knife and it hits Luther in the arm, and that's basically the end.
Because then the rifts come and they let the warriors go, and
like
they have their way with the rogues.
Yes, they're going to receive their punishment for what they did to Luther, and I think this is just one of those moments.
You got to play this scene.
Yeah. And he's like, oh, he like dodges. He's like, oh no. And what's so crazy about it is Snow's like standing right behind Swan.
No, that's what I was like. Okay, so I can understand that he moved and went to the side and then threw the knife right before the guy had to react. But what about Snow behind him?
Yeah, the easiest way to fix this is that Swan gets hit in the shoulder, but he still hits Luther and hits him in the arm, and he drops the gun.
Yeah.
And then the Gramercy
rifts come
in. And then you're just like, okay, that's good enough. But yeah, that's pretty much the end of the movie. Here are the Gramercies. They're definitely, I like these guys a lot. Just as their gang in particular, I just always kind of found to be really cool. And
yes, you kind of wish that you saw them more, right?
Yeah, but the fact that they're in the shadows, that they're established as this type of character, it completely works. You don't get too much of them because this movie is ultimately about the warriors and their journey home to Coney Island. So really like that. You get a little bit more from our mysterious DJ. And she's basically like, everything's back to normal, right?
Yeah, sending everything out.
Let me see if
she plays a song saying about the horizon.
Yes. So let me see if
it has been called off. It turns out that the early reports were wrong, all wrong. Now, for that group out there that had such a hard time getting home, sorry about that. I guess the only thing we can do is play you a song.
So yeah, her voice is great in this.
So great.
It's so
She may
good.
be my favorite character. And she's like not even, not
she's
the
in it like
protagonist
3 or 4
antagonist.
times.
Yeah.
I think in the director's cut, she actually gets a slightly bigger role. I think they added a little bit more of her in it, if I remember correctly. But
yeah,
I haven't. I only watched the original one because I don't really care for like the cartoony like comic book
film
cuts or whatever.
Yeah.
It's just like, all right, I don't know what
it
you
probably
think
added
of this.
to my interpretation of everything else. You know what I mean?
I get why they did it, and it helps give it a little bit more of this unrealistic feel, which is kind of what you want for the setting. You want to be able to, it's like, okay, it's a little goofy, but we're trying to go for this maybe like it's a comic book graphic novel kind of feel rather than this serious gritty story. It mixes those two pretty well. So, but yeah, guys, that is The Warriors, and that's actually all we have time for this week. I had a whole nother section, but we don't have time to get to it. Joseph, is there any other comments that you want to make about the movie before we wrap up? And I'm asking you because I'm looking through my notes.
No, great job by Walter Hill, who was the director. I mean, doing this movie and on a $4 million budget for that time and executing it so well with a simple premise and doing some, subverting expectations in the beginning, right? You think it's going to be this story about how these gangs are going to join together and fight for a better future, and then it turns that into a survival story, right? On the flip of a whim, just because of one random actor. And so, yeah, some things that don't work, but solid movie. And yeah, that's pretty much it. Outside of that, don't forget to follow us on YouTube or subscribe to us on there. Comment, like our videos. Follow us on TikTok. And if you have some money and you want to donate to us, hit the PayPal donation link. And I forgot to mention, add your note and we'll read it live on air.
Yes. So I had 2 more little things that I wrote down that I thought were kind of funny. So the first one was about the Lizzie scene. I said, the scene with the Lizzies are some of my favorites, being an adaptation of sirens from Greek mythology. Also, nothing says equality like getting obliterated by a chair. And then the other one that I had was it's a line from Mercy when the punks are coming after him. She says, I can't go in there. It's a men's room.
And then the guy comes out like, yeah, right.
Yeah, like, get in here. What are you talking about?
It's so great, too, because with the Lizzies, you definitely have those established, realistic traits with men and women, right? The Lizzies try to use their femininity, their wits, their ability to seduce, to catch the warriors at their weakest moment, and then the men just overpower them.
Pretty much, yeah.
Use their athleticism and everything. So,
and again, I think most of our complaints come down to the firearms in the movie, making it a little less believable. I think that's probably the big thing with this movie, is that if the firearms were pretty much taken out, except for maybe the one at the very beginning with Luther, and somehow
it was done differently.
It was just done a little bit, but yeah, the logic made sense. And they had just gotten rid of firearms for the rest of the movie, most of my complaints would pretty much disappear, other than some of the stuff that's just like, a lot of these people they were first-time actors. It was first roles for them. They were really young. And then the budget, which you can't completely help. I mean, it's not like that stuff really stops me from really liking this movie. Because,
right. Exactly.
I just appreciate that this exists. And this is another one of those movies, man, that they could never make today.
No, not with the lines are in this movie.
Yeah, some of the language in it too. I'm like, oh shoot! I was like, I forgot about that.
Like, oh, glad I'm just watching this by myself.
Yep.